It's no secret that the financial industry has an inclusion problem. Marginalized groups, including people of color, women, and the LGBTQI plus communities, feel discouraged from engaging in financial services. This leaves them at a disadvantage in building wealth and achieving economic security. But there are organizations out there working to change this. They're providing access to financial education, statistics, and resources for marginalized communities and helping them overcome barriers preventing them from achieving financial success. In this episode, recorded at FinCon 22, I invited Dr. Billy Hensley, CEO of the National Endowment for Financial Education, NEFE, to discuss the need for inclusion and equality through empowerment and education within the financial services sector. In particular, highlighting the most current issues affecting the financial lives of the LGBTQIA plus communities. I'm Bob Wheeler, and this is Money You Should Ask, where we explore why we do what we do when it comes to money. Our guest, Dr. Billy Hensley, is president and CEO of NEFE, a nonprofit foundation that champions effective financial education. NEFE is the independent, centralizing voice providing leadership, research, and collaboration to advance financial well-being. In May 2022, NEFE surveyed U.S. adults who identify as LGBTQIA plus community members on a broad range of issues regarding their interactions with the financial services industry and their financial quality of life. I urge you to read the full report, How LGBTQIA plus representation assures better data. There needs to be more discussions about inclusion through education, which means everyone, which means you. A link to the full report is included in our show notes. Dr. Hensley, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I know you've got a lot of information. I'm a huge fan of NEFE, and so thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here. I love talking about this and shedding light on all kinds of aspects of financial education and how it can be better.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting and what I love about what NEFE is doing is you're actually getting data, right? So somebody can say, oh, I feel sad, or I feel poor, or I feel like it's not working out for me. But you actually have data to back this up so that if somebody wants to trust the numbers, you've got some numbers.
Right, yeah.
You did a talk yesterday. We're at FinCon, and there's a lot of data about the LGBTQ plus community and other underserved communities. What are some of the statistics you found that are just, I think people would find surprising?
Well, sort of to position this, being at FinCon where they're talking about money nerds, we're not just money nerds, we're data money nerds. So we're even worse, But the more you dig into this topic of money management, there's so many factors that influence our financial lives. And it's everything from how we make decisions to how we see ourselves in decisions to do we even feel present in the room when we're talking about something that is highly personal as money and personal finance. And so what we wanted to do is look deeper into LGBTQ issues, how people feel about money, where they have felt excluded. And this really stemmed from being asked to write a blog post in 2021 for Pride Month. And there were very few data available at all with queer folks and money. And so we did a survey in the spring, nationally represented sample, to dig into this because we wanted to give voice and we wanted to not only have anecdotal and qualitative information, but we wanted statistical information.
And it's surprising there wasn't a lot of data, or maybe it's not surprising. Maybe that, everybody else is like, well, it doesn't impact me, so I'm not interested. When you started digging, what were some of the surprising findings that you found?
Well, I don't know that I would say that I felt terribly surprised because the more layers of the money onion we peel back here, the more nuance that there is. And then, but the things that make sense in your gut, people have been discriminated against in this community their whole life, and almost every factor. Why not money as well? And so, but the rate of discrimination being twice as much as the general population is really the sort of the main point that I want listeners to understand, and I want people to understand, is that the general population at large experiences discrimination or bias on multiple levels, whether that's age, whether that's education level. The gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer community experiences this at twice that rate. And then you also compound on top of that all of the other issues of socioeconomic status, education level, age, retirement readiness, and so forth. It just compounds it at a factor by 2.
Do you think with the double the discrimination and all that even though that's coming from the outside, there may be personal I don't want to say self-sabotage, but maybe like I'm undeserving. Society says I don't belong here, and so maybe it's harder for me to find my place or to feel like I'm actually part of the tribe.
Yeah, I think I would characterize it about being confident. Mm-hmm. When you feel beat down in certain ways, mm-hmm. or you feel, I don't want to face that financial planner again, or that teller. Oh gosh, that's that one teller who always asks me how, if I'm married or about my wife, for example. I don't want to deal with that again. Right. And so it starts to chip away at your confidence. And if you've been discriminated against on pay, on job opportunities, and now there are financial products that don't fit, or you don't feel that work well for you or in your situation, or you feel that the services that you're trying to attain are harder to attain because of who you are, mm-hmm. And you're trying to live your life in an authentic way, but the confidence has been chipped down and has been pushed away. And then maybe you've had little access for things like financial education, for example, which we know helps increase confidence. Right. When you have all of these barriers over and over and over, it does play at your ability to sort of advocate for yourself in a way that gives you enough confidence to sort of manage your financial life. And, this is not 100% of LGBTQ folks, but right. the percentage is very high.
Yeah. And do you think, I know in Los Angeles and West Hollywood, there are a lot of gay men that may have a lot of debt, right? That they, a couple different things. There was a period I had several clients that had a lot of debt because they had tested positive. They figured, who cares? Oh. And I'm going to spend all this money. And then all of a sudden, I'm still around. Now I'm going to have to deal with my finances because they thought, well, I'm not going to be around. Who cares? And then another part of the population I've seen where I don't feel good about myself, so I'm going to go out and buy the nicest car, the fanciest clothes, and let everybody know how this I am, even though underneath there's just this fear of, I hope nobody figures out that I'm just presenting well.
Well, I would say that's all of us, gay, straight.
That's true.
The keeping up with our neighbors, the posturing ourselves with certain labels. I literally was just walking down the hall and saw so many designer labels on clothes that, I question, is this because this is the best product for them, or are they positioning themselves a certain way?
Right.
And there are multiple conferences going on here, so I don't know if they're part of this group or not. But, I think that's a general sort of American trope, if you will. But I think that sense of trying to build confidence in any way we can, if clothing is something that works for you, or travel, or a nice. I love cars personally.
Okay.
I was always the person who had a new car every 3 or 4 years. It's just who I am. I love cars. Always have, even as a kid. And so that to me was a marker of success in some ways, even though I was buying things I probably couldn't afford, especially in my 20s, that we all do, or a lot of us do. So I think that plays out in a way that you're also sort of trying to navigate a system, trying to belong, knowing that you can't always bring your authentic full self to the table, whether that's in financial services or education or wherever that is. And then we all try to find ways to sort of cope with that. And sometimes it's very unhealthy financial behaviors that we lean into. I don't think it's necessarily attributed to LGBTQ folks in particular. I think it's an American thing. But when you're already starting with multiple layers of discrimination and bias to manage. Our financial lives are complicated. There are so many obstacles that impede financial well-being for many of us. And the reason we do things like this poll, for example, is to shed light on the boulders, to shed light on the obstacles so that we can either help people navigate around them or advocate for their removal altogether, which is the ideal.
Right. And so when you get this data, and now you've got this information, how do you do that? How do you go out and, you shed the light and then you help take down some walls? But how does NEFE go out with this data and say, hey, people, wake up, look at this information?
Yeah. Well, this is one of those. Talking to you, talking to these really smart, brilliant people who have a platform. We want to shed light. We want to give voice, provide platform to share all of the trust that NEFE's been able to build over the years with being a research-based organization, and say, hey, you've trusted us with these other questions. Here's another time we need to listen. And so the more that we can talk about these data, the more that we can shed light on experiences of disenfranchised or any of us who can achieve our financial best life. We want to be able to do that. And so we do it through media, we do it through research, we do it through research publications, sort of the old school peer-reviewed research journals. We are trying to touch it in as many ways as possible. And we hope that allows industry, we hope that it empowers the consumer to understand how do they advocate for themselves, how do they go back to the bank, how do they go to their financial planner and say, listen, this has been an issue. I think we could do better with better language. I think we can do better with better products. And hopefully it empowers individuals to either advocate for themselves or the system change, or ideally both.
Yeah. Now, NEFE is getting ready to celebrate 30 years.
Yes.
Which is pretty awesome. How long has financial literacy been a passion of yours?
Well, I didn't know what to call it when I was in college. I remember distinctly sitting in a class. I won't say the class. I won't call out the name of the course, but it was an 8 a.m. class. And I would sit in that class and write out sort of all of my expenses. And so I guess I had a predisposition to at least record that. And it was this sense of trying to create order in my life in a way and write down the budget. So at that time, I think I was very interested in that. And then I started looking at it more closely, especially when I was in my 20s. And this was right before the housing collapse. 2004, I was asking myself, well, everyone else is buying a house. Why shouldn't I?
Right.
I bought a house, and then I read a book, a personal finance book, my first one, and it basically told me I did everything wrong. I took the first product that was offered. I just bought because I didn't think about any of the expenses that went into buying a house. Right. I didn't have a water hose. I didn't have a rake or a hoe. I had nothing. And yeah, I went from a one-bedroom apartment to a house and trying to make that transition. So I think that deepened the interest. And then when I finished graduate school and I saw the position at NEFE, I started originally as director of education before I became CEO. And it was a marriage of research and decision making and education. And it was sort of the perfect job for me. And so it elevated that interest that I already had. I wouldn't say I was a personal finance nerd, but I've always been a research nerd, if you will. Yeah. And I married those things and then add on to that philanthropy. And it's been an amazing job, an amazing experience. And I think my particular lens of being, growing up in a very low income, blue collar community, I think it's brought a lens, especially for research, about how we ask questions and what questions we ask. So, that part of it has been fun, is to try to figure out my own lane. Yeah. And how do we sort of elevate that? And so, we're 30. I guess NEFE's a millennial,
exactly.
if you will. So,
and growing up in a small town, blue collar, low income, did your parents talk about money? Did they talk about money with you? Did they handle their money with finesse?
Lord, no. No to all of that. Where I grew up, you just sort of get by. money was a means to an end. It was like you paid the bill that was in front of you. You put food on the table. There was no discussion about down the road. 401k, 403b was not on the radar. None of us knew what that was. It sounds like computer code. It just wasn't part of what we talked about. It was about the immediate need. And communities that are largely impoverished or poor, that's how you have to manage. And one of the things that I've said since I've been at NEFE is that low income and poor people in particular, like where I grew up, can stretch a dollar better than anyone. Way better than probably anyone in this room, if if we're being honest. But they don't have enough resources to like apply that on a large scale for their life. It's about getting from Wednesday to payday.
Yeah.
It's about paying the bill. And so we didn't talk about religion, we didn't talk about politics, and we didn't talk about money. Those are the things we didn't talk about.
Right.
I'm a Gen Xer, so I came of age in the early 90s, and but my parents, they struggled to make ends meet. They largely lived paycheck to paycheck. They lived, they worked hourly jobs. And just probably the last 10 years of their career did they finally feel a little comfortable. But we never talked about it. We never talked about money management. The only messages I really got was from my grandparents who avoided all debt. And that's almost the other extreme. We hold that up, but then there's no example for how to manage a mortgage and how to manage a credit card. It was just sort of this evil thing that you push to the side. But the life we live now, you have to have some version of a card, whether it's a debit card or not. And how do you manage that? We didn't talk about any of those things.
Well, I'm thinking about up in the coal towns that I visited. In high school, we would go and work in these different communities, Drift, Kentucky, and places. And education literacy, let alone financial literacy, just wasn't always a thing. A lot of people didn't get through high school. And I remember this family talking about being able to stretch a dollar. This woman had several kids, and man, with a piece of bacon and a bunch of flour, she could make sausage gravy and bacon gravy and make it like, one piece of bacon. I'm like, man, like she knew how to make that dollar stretch, and she'd give you her last Coke in the refrigerator. And it was like, there's a will there to like, we will survive. I mean, it may not be in Beverly Hills, but we're gonna,
we're gonna eat,
and we're gonna, and we're gonna get there. And so I appreciate that, the tenacity or the like, just the raw determination. But I it's hard. You go out, and then you go out into the cities, or because I'm from Tennessee, like people went to Ohio and Kentucky and Clarksville because we had a tire plant that was related to Ohio and stuff. And so, but still going out into the city, but not having that education, still only really maybe having some skill, physical labor. Right. And then it's, nobody's just handing out this information. And if you don't know to ask for it, you don't know to ask for it.
Right. You don't know what you don't know. And yeah. Well, that's the thing about the education, literacy, financial literacy, all these things that sort of are measures of knowledge gain, knowledge application. And a lot of the educational deficiencies that are sort of tracked in Appalachia in particular, where I grew up, especially central Appalachia, my grandfather, he had to leave school when he was 8 years old, not 8th grade, 3rd grade, to help build the road, to help, it wasn't just the road through the creek at that point. He had to help build the road to help feed his family. So it wasn't that people didn't value the education. They just had no choice. They had very few choices, and it was an opportunity for him to make money, contribute to the family. And he never stopped working. He worked the rest of his life, and died very young because he worked himself to death. But that's the part of Appalachia that we don't talk about, is that determination that you're talking about, the survivorship, the work hard, make it work, make it stretch. And on some levels, I consider myself a person who maximizes every opportunity, and it's probably because of that. Right. It's not a consumer tip and trick thing. It is just instinctual, or maybe it's learned. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm the person who squeezes the toothpaste until there is absolutely nothing left in there.
Guilty.
Back over it with the steamroller to get one more use out of that toothpaste.
Yep.
But that's who I am,
Right.
But I will also go out and eat a really good dinner because I love food.
Right.
And be less stressed about that than I am that toothpaste went up a nickel. Yeah, it's the essentials that bug me.
Oh my God. We've been talking about this a lot, how much I will save to save a buck, and it doesn't always save.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm just
Right.
well, there's one more drop in the soup can,
Right.
and there's
Right.
one. And I'm a little, compulsive about getting every.
Yes.
And I grew up in a big family, so
Yeah,
man,
sure.
you eat everything on your plate because there's people elsewhere starving,
Right.
and so
Right.
I can't,
Right.
it's very difficult,
Right.
even in a restaurant, to go,
Right.
I'll take it to go. I'm just it's a mindset that I
Right.
fight against because it's so instinctual, it's so
Yeah.
automatic.
Well, we've got these layers of our identity. And when you're thinking about this population that we survey, the LGBTQ population, I'm a gay, male-identifying person. My sex is male. I grew up where I grew, Central Appalachia and Eastern Kentucky in the coal fields. All of those identities layer on, and all of who I am layers into my financial life, my financial identity, if you will. And when I think about these data in particular, I kept thinking about my blue collar background and sort of the poor community where I grew up, and all the layers of that as people make decisions and as people try to navigate, as people don't even question authority when it comes to like advocating for themselves.
Yeah.
And then I look at these data and I see the discrimination level. And then when I look at our trans community, it's not double, it's quadruple.
Wow.
The discrimination. And so when you're bringing in a trans person who's wanting to live their most authentic life, and part of that is to be able to pay for your most authentic life. And when you can't fully participate in the financial services, it breaks my heart because I'm like, why should we all not have that path?
Right.
Why should we write off people? Why should they have to navigate foolishness at the bank or at the financial services sector? And the thing that's fascinating to me is our financial lives are largely remote now, largely online. And this survey was done in the spring of 2022. So it's not old data. This is recent data. So it's reflecting the current financial lives of LGBTQIA people. And we're interacting with financial services largely remotely and largely online, and this is still happening.
Wow.
And it's about the products, it's about the access. And then our trans community, they are facing this way worse. And then you layer on to that being a person of color.
Right.
Being a person from a low SES background, it's just so much harder. There's so many other layers. And so we've got to listen. We've got to give voice, just like my sweet departed grandfather who worked himself to death. Had he had different paths available to him, he would have been a CEO of a corporation because he died actually a very successful man. But it was so much harder to get there. And if we can help ease the path, if we can create better on-ramps, if we can shed light that there's a giant boulder ahead, watch out, then maybe we have more CEOs who represent who we really are as a society.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. What do you want your legacy at NEFE to be?
Better data. My job is to assure better data. And that it's not just more data, it's better data. And that answer and that conversation probably take an hour, but that's my job, to assure better data.
That's awesome. Well, Billy, we are close to the Fast Five, and I know today we're on a limited interview schedule, and we're going to do a couple more.
Okay.
We're going to jump into the Fast Five, and I will say Fast Five is really brought to you by NEFE in a way, because they've been a sponsor here at FinCon, helping people be able to use the equipment and participate. So thank you, NEFE.
Yes, of course.
Love NEFE. All right, so I'm just going to throw these out, and let's sort of see where we go.
All right.
So do you always handle your own finances with ease and grace?
Ease, yes. Grace, no. Ease, yes. I mean, I still balance my checkbook every day.
Okay.
Because that provides me, I feel good. I feel like I achieved something. But grace, probably not.
All right. What's a secret indulgence that you like to spend money on? Maybe you feel guilty, maybe you don't, but I gotta have it.
A really good, I'm sorry, vegetarians, but a really good filet from, can I say the brand?
Yeah.
Can I say the Ruth's Chris or Capitol Grill? Those two organizations, those two restaurants and their fillets fill my heart with joy. And really good ice cream. Yes. And really good French fries and really good popsicles. Listen, it's all food based.
It's food based. All right. I love that. I love that. What's the most shocking financial statistic you've seen that was shocking to you?
Well, this is positive.
Yeah.
We're data that are positive. 88% of Americans want every single teen in this country to take a financial education course to graduate from high school.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you know any other percentage that many Americans agree on something?
Wow, there's very few.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
And I think my goal is to get that to 99.9%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still surprises me.
Yeah.
It is not taught and it is not mandatory.
Yeah. We're getting
at this
there.
moment.
More and more. More and more states.
We are. What emotion do you experience most around money?
Recently, relief. I've paid a lot of things off.
Yeah.
That recently. But in general, there's always a layer of anxiety. When you grow up working class, when you grow up poor, it never leaves you. And I can see it in my mother's eyes because she grew up incredibly. I don't mean just poor as in didn't have the new shoes, as in she didn't have running water until she was a teen.
Yeah.
That poor. And that anxiety transcends. So relief and anxiety at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Awesome. Is there one place in the world that you really want to travel to, but you haven't traveled to yet? Where is it, and are you going to go there?
I want to reschedule my Mediterranean cruise that was supposed to happen in 2020.
Okay.
I really want to do that. I want to enjoy the food, especially the Tuscan food. If it's anything close to what I've had really good here, again, food. I mean, it's a wonder I don't just go, find a corner and just eat all the time. But I want to go to Italy, to the southern France because of the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good
yes.
choice.
And I will do it. Yes.
Good. All right. So money and motivation, our sweet spot, M&M. Do you have a practical financial tip or a piece of wealth wisdom, something that's worked for you that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty fundamental and basic, but I go back to my first couple of jobs, back when you actually got paper, when you started a job. Maximize your benefits. Take advantage of everything your employer offers because it is compensation.
Yeah.
Your retirement match, your health insurance, your EAP, whatever it is your employer is offering you, they're offering that because they want you to be there. They want to incentivize you to stay.
Yeah.
So use it all. Use your vision benefit. Use it all. Get the most out of it. Yeah, and don't leave vacation days on the table because that is just giving back money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And 401k match. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Don't give up the match.
Yes.
It's amazing how many people...
Yeah. I think it's because people don't understand what it does to their liquidity. I think if we showed them the calculation of it's only an extra of $30 a month you're getting, that may be enough that people still say no because their life is so tight financially. Yeah. But just know that eventually, maybe you can, as you get a raise, put that in there. I do think if people understood what it did to their net pay, that they may participate more often.
Yeah, I think so. Financial education,
right,
which is what you are doing. That is what you're doing. Well, I love that you're out there grabbing the data, that you're out there doing the work and spotlighting the boulders ahead, right? Because there's so many people out there that want, that don't know about this financial literacy piece, and they struggle. They think they're alone, and so I love that NEFE is out there educating, getting the data, showing it to people that can help make a difference. Yeah. Because that's what you need as well as allies to help move us along. So I appreciate what you're doing. Where can people find you and NEFE on social media and online?
You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Billy Hensley, Dr. Billy Hensley. And then NEFE is at NEFE_org, O-R-G, NEFE_org. And then, LinkedIn, you just look for our name and you can find us on LinkedIn. And then NEFE.org is our website.
Great. Well, we will put all of that information in the links, and congratulations on 30 years with NEFE. And it's just been such a pleasure. I love NEFE, love what they're doing, and excited because we're going to be doing NEFE in November.
Yes.
So more to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.